The notification chimed as I was scrolling through Facebook at 2:17 a.m. on a Tuesday. I shouldn't have been awake. Shouldn't have been scrolling mindlessly through my feed when I had an early morning presentation. But insomnia had become my unwelcome companion these past weeks. Marissa Ellis tagged Daniel Ellis in 37 new photos. My thumb froze mid-scroll. Marissa? I didn't know a Marissa. At least I didn't think I did. I tapped on the notification, and the screen filled with images that made my stomach drop through the floor. My husband, smiling, laughing, his arm around a stunning woman with coppery hair that caught the sunset behind them. Her head tilted onto his shoulder in a casual intimacy that felt like a knife twisting in my chest. The caption read, "Weekend getaway with my favorite person." My blessed "tain't no filter needed," I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My fingers shook as I zoomed in on his face, the face I'd woken up to for 7 years. The face that had kissed me goodbye that morning with a casual, "Love you, Claire. Don't wait up, business dinner tonight." The same face that was now beaming at another woman on a beach I'd never seen. Wearing a shirt I didn't recognize, without thinking, I navigated to my profile page and hovered over my relationship status. 7 years of married to Daniel Ellis stared back at me. 7 years of what I thought was building something unbreakable. I changed it to single. Then I watched as my phone lit up with message after message. But not from him. No, from friends, family, acquaintances. Everyone but the one person who should have been explaining himself. My shattered heart hardened into something cold and unfamiliar as I set my phone down on the nightstand and walked to our closet. His suits hung neatly beside my dresses, the physical embodiment of our intertwined lives. I knew then what I had to do. 6 months earlier. Claire. They loved it. Daniel burst through our front door, his tall frame vibrating with excitement as he dropped his briefcase by the entryway table. Prentice and Morrow wants to take on the campaign. Full creative control, doubled budget. I looked up from my laptop where I'd been finalizing next week's lecture slides for my Psychology of Media class. That's incredible! I stood up, genuinely thrilled for him. Daniel had been working on this advertising pitch for weeks, often staying at the office until midnight. He swept me into a hug that lifted me off my feet, spinning me around our living room. At 38, Daniel Ellis still had the enthusiasm of the 25-year-old creative director I'd fallen in love with. His dark hair was graying slightly at the temples now, but his eyes still crinkled at the corners when he smiled, which he was doing now, broadly and without reservation. "We need to celebrate," he said, setting me down but keeping his arms around my waist. "How about that new place in Tribeca you've been wanting to try?" I hesitated, glancing back at my laptop. "I have these slides to finish and—" "Claire," he interrupted gently, tucking a strand of my blonde hair behind my ear. "It's Friday night. Your slides will be there tomorrow. This is big for us. Us, that was Daniel. My victories were his victories. And his were mine. We were a team. Had been since graduate school when we'd met in a crowded campus coffee shop 13 years ago. Me pursuing my PhD in media psychology. Him determined to revolutionize digital advertising. "You're right," I said, smiling up at him. "Let me change. Dinner was perfect." Daniel ordered an expensive bottle of champagne, and we clinked glasses across a table illuminated by candlelight. "To new beginnings," he toasted, his eyes locking with mine. I didn't know then how prophetic those words would be. The changes were subtle at first. A canceled dinner here, a weekend work emergency there. Daniel's new account required more travel, San Francisco, Chicago, Miami. Always with the same explanation. Building the client relationship is crucial in this phase. I understood. I really did. Academia had its own demands, and I'd pulled my share of late nights grading papers or preparing for conferences. Marriage was about supporting each other's dreams, weathering the busy seasons together. But by the 3rd month, the subtle had become undeniable. "Daniel, we haven't had dinner together in 2 weeks," I said one night as he packed for yet another trip. He paused, a folded shirt in his hands. "I know, and I hate it too. But this campaign is make or break for the agency. For us." He placed the shirt in his suitcase with methodical precision. Once we're past the launch, things will settle down. I sat on the edge of our bed, watching him pack the same shirts, the same toiletries, into the same suitcase, a routine that had become far too familiar. "When's the launch again?" "6 weeks, he said, not meeting my eyes as he continued packing. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. 6 more weeks of falling asleep alone. 6 more weeks of conversations reduced to hurried phone calls and perfunctory texts. "Maybe I could come with you this weekend?" I suggested, trying to keep my voice casual. "I don't have classes on Friday. We could make a mini vacation out of it." Daniel finally looked at me, his expression unreadable. "It's not that kind of trip, Claire. I'll be in meetings the entire time, even at night." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Client dinners. You know how it is." I did know how it was, or at least how it used to be. Daniel and I had built our relationship on honesty and communication. But lately, I felt like I was having conversations with his voicemail rather than my husband. "Right," I said, standing up. "Well, have a good trip." I walked out of our bedroom before he could see the tears welling in my eyes. "You think he's having an affair?" Zoe stated matter-of-factly. Stirring her coffee at our weekly lunch date, I nearly choked on my salad. "What? No, I never said that." Zoe had been my best friend since college, blunt to the point of brutality but always loyal. Her dark eyes studied me over the rim of her mug. "You didn't have to say it. It's written all over your face every time you talk about him lately." I pushed my salad around with my fork. "He's just busy with this new account." "For 4 months straight? With mysterious weekend trips? And let me guess, he's become weirdly protective of his phone?" The fork stopped mid-stab. Daniel had, in fact, started taking his phone with him even to the bathroom, something he'd never done before. And twice now I'd walked into rooms to find him ending calls abruptly. Zoe saw the recognition in my eyes and reached across the table to squeeze my hand. "Honey, I'm not saying he definitely is, but these are classic signs. And you deserve to know the truth. What am I supposed to do? Hack into his email? Follow him to the airport?" The words came out more bitter than I intended. "No," Zoe said firmly. "You talk to him, directly. No accusations, just concerns. See how he reacts." I nodded, though my stomach knotted at the thought. What if voicing my fears made them real? I tried to follow Zoe's advice. Really tried. But every time I worked up the courage, Daniel would bring home my favorite takeout, or send a sweet text in the middle of the day, and I'd convince myself I was being paranoid, until the night I found the receipt. I wasn't snooping, not intentionally. I was doing laundry, emptying pockets before throwing clothes in the wash, when my fingers closed around a crumpled paper in Daniel's suit jacket. A receipt from a jewelry store in Miami, for a woman's bracelet that cost more than our monthly mortgage payment. My birthday had passed 2 months ago. Our anniversary wasn't for another 3 months. That night, when Daniel called from San Francisco, I kept my voice steady as we discussed mundane things, my classes, his meetings, a leak under the kitchen sink that needed fixing. "I miss you," he said at the end of the call, his voice softening in that way that had always made my heart race. "I miss you too," I replied automatically. And I did. I missed the Daniel I thought I knew, the one I wasn't sure existed anymore. After hanging up, I opened my laptop and did something I'd never done before. I logged into our shared credit card account and began scrolling through the transactions from the past few months. Restaurants I'd never heard of. Hotel charges in cities he wasn't supposed to be visiting. A second phone line added 3 months ago, and repeated Uber receipts to and from an address in Brooklyn that wasn't anywhere near his office. The evidence mounted like a slow-rising tide, threatening to drown me. But still, I clung to denial like a life raft. There could be explanations. Reasonable, innocent explanations that didn't involve my husband betraying everything we'd built together. Couldn't there? The next morning, I called in sick to the university, something I almost never did. Instead, I drove to Daniel's office building in Manhattan, parked across the street, and waited. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. At 11:37 a.m., Daniel emerged from the building with a woman I'd never seen before. Tall, with long copper-colored hair that caught the sunlight. They weren't touching, but they were standing close. Too close for colleagues. She laughed at something he said, and he beamed at her in a way that made my heart splinter. They got into an Uber together, and I followed at a distance, my mind oddly calm despite the chaos erupting in my chest. The car took them to a small bistro in the West Village, intimate, with outdoor seating partially obscured by planters filled with lush greenery, perfect for a private lunch date. I parked across the street and watched through my windshield as they were seated, as Daniel reached across the table to touch her hand. As she leaned forward and kissed him quickly but unmistakably on the lips, the world stopped spinning. Or maybe it was spinning too fast. I couldn't tell anymore as I sat frozen in my car, watching my marriage disintegrate before my eyes. I didn't confront them. Didn't cause a scene or throw water in his face like characters did in movies. Instead, I drove home in a daze, packed an overnight bag, and called Zoe. "I'm coming over," was all I said. "And I need wine." Lots of it. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of sleeping on Zoe's pull-out couch. 2 weeks of ignoring Daniel's increasingly frantic calls and texts asking where I was, if I was okay, why I wasn't coming home. I went to my classes, smiled at my students, and pretended my life wasn't collapsing around me. At night, I'd sit on Zoe's balcony, staring at the city lights and trying to figure out what to do next. "You have to talk to him eventually," Zoe said on the 14th night, handing me a glass of wine as she joined me outside, "even if it's just to discuss divorce proceedings." The word divorce hit me like a physical blow, though I'd been thinking it for days. Ending a 13-year relationship, dismantling the life we'd built so carefully together. "I know," I whispered. "I just need a little more time." Zoe nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Take all the time you need. But don't torture yourself by dragging it out either." That night, after Zoe went to bed, I opened Facebook on my laptop. I rarely used it anymore, too busy with real life to bother with virtual connections. But something compelled me to check Daniel's page. His profile picture was still us, a happy selfie from our trip to Greece 2 years ago. His status still read, "Married to Claire Ellis." Nothing to indicate he was living a double life. I scrolled through his friends list, searching for a name I didn't recognize. There were hundreds, colleagues, college friends, industry connections. No Marissa. I was about to log off when a notification appeared. Daniel Ellis was tagged in a post. Heart pounding, I clicked on it. It was a group photo from some industry event last week. Daniel standing with colleagues, smiling professionally. Nothing suspicious. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by shame. Was I becoming obsessed? Turning into the cliché of the paranoid wife? I closed my laptop and finally fell into a fitful sleep. The next morning, I woke to a text from Daniel that was different from the others. "I know you're staying at Zoe's. I know you saw me with Marissa." "Please, Claire." "Let me explain. It's not what you think." I stared at the screen, my blood turning to ice. Marissa. So that was her name. And he knew I'd seen them. Had he spotted me following them that day? Before I could process this, another text came through. "I'm coming to Zoe's at 7 tonight. If you don't want to see me, you don't have to be there. But I'm bringing all your things from the apartment. I've signed a lease on a new place. I think it's best we make this separation official." The phone slipped from my numb fingers onto the floor. He was leaving me? He was leaving me? After everything, after his betrayal, his lies. He was acting like this was his decision? Like he was the wounded party? Rage rose within me, hot and clarifying. For 2 weeks, I'd been drowning in grief and confusion. But this was something else entirely. This was gaslighting of the highest order. I picked up my phone and typed a response. "Don't bother. I'll get my own things. And Daniel? Make sure you update your Facebook relationship status. Wouldn't want Marissa to get the wrong idea." Then I blocked his number. That night, I waited until I knew Daniel would be at work and went back to our apartment with Zoe. We packed as much of my personal belongings as would fit in her car. Clothes, books, the family photos and heirlooms that were mine before our marriage. As I was gathering the last of my things from our bedroom, my eyes fell on a framed photo on Daniel's nightstand. Us on our wedding day, foreheads pressed together, smiles so wide our faces could barely contain them. I picked it up, ran my finger over his face, then placed it face down in the drawer. "Claire," Zoe called from the living room. "We should go. It's getting late." I took one last look around the space that had been my home, nodded to myself, and left without looking back. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I finally logged into Facebook again from Zoe's apartment. Sleep evaded me, and I found myself scrolling mindlessly through my feed, looking at other people's perfectly curated lives and wondering how many of them were as fraudulent as mine had been. That's when I saw it. The notification that would change everything. Marissa Ellis tagged Daniel Ellis in 37 new photos. Ellis. She had his last name, my last name. My fingers trembling, I clicked on the notification, and the screen filled with images that seemed to come from an alternate reality. Daniel and this woman, Marissa, on a beach, at restaurants, in what looked like a living room I'd never seen before. The captions were even worse. "Weekend getaway with my favorite person. Blessed, yeah, no filter needed, and home sweet home with my love and 3 years together, and it only gets better." 3 years? 3 years of our 7-year marriage, he had been with her. But it was the comments that truly destroyed me. "You two are the perfect couple. So glad you finally found happiness, Danny. When's the baby due again? I'm so excited to meet little Emma." Baby. They were having a baby. A little girl they'd already named Emma. I navigated to my profile page and hovered over my relationship status. 7 years of married to Daniel Ellis stared back at me. 7 years of what I thought was building something unbreakable. I changed it to single. Then, fueled by a rage I'd never experienced before, I went to his page. Our wedding photo was gone from his profile. In its place, a picture of him and Marissa on what appeared to be their own wedding day. The pieces finally clicked into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't just an affair. This was a second life. A second marriage. My husband was a bigamist. The law offices of Keller and Associates were housed in a sleek Manhattan high-rise with views of Central Park. I sat in a comfortable leather chair across from Patricia Keller, one of the city's most formidable divorce attorneys, and, fortunately for me, a former college classmate. "Let me make sure I understand correctly," Patricia said, her manicured fingers steepled in front of her. "You believe your husband has been legally married to another woman for approximately 3 years, while still legally married to you?" "I don't just believe it," I replied, sliding a folder across her desk. "I have proof." Inside the folder were printouts of the Facebook photos, screenshots of financial records showing payments for an apartment in Brooklyn, and, most damning of all, a copy of a marriage certificate I'd found through an online record search. Daniel Ellis had indeed married Marissa Langford on June 17th, 3 years ago. While still very much married to me, Patricia reviewed the documents, her expression unreadable. "This is unusual, to say the least. Is it a strong case?" I asked. "For divorce?" "Absolutely. For criminal charges of bigamy?" "Also, yes." She looked up at me, her professional demeanor softening slightly. "Claire, I have to ask, what do you want out of this? A quick, quiet divorce? Or do you want to pursue criminal charges?" The question hung in the air between us. What did I want? 2 weeks ago, I'd wanted my marriage back. A week ago, I'd wanted answers. Now? "I want him to face consequences," I said finally. "Not just legal ones. I want everyone to know what he did." Patricia nodded slowly. "That can be arranged. But I should warn you, once this becomes public, your life will be affected too." "Are you prepared for that? Was I?" My reputation at the university, my relationships with friends and family, my sense of privacy, all would be impacted by a public scandal. But then I thought of those Facebook photos, of Daniel and Marissa building a life together while I waited alone in our apartment night after night, of the baby they were expecting, a half-sibling to the children Daniel and I had planned to have someday. "I'm prepared," I said firmly. "Where do we start?" The first step was gathering more concrete evidence. Patricia hired a private investigator who confirmed what the Facebook photos had suggested. Daniel was living a double life between our Manhattan apartment and a brownstone in Brooklyn with Marissa. The investigator's report included surveillance photos, financial records, and witness statements from neighbors who knew them as the Ellis family. "Did you ever suspect anything?" Patricia asked as we reviewed the report in her office. I shook my head, still struggling to comprehend the extent of Daniel's deception. He was always so present when he was home, attentive, loving. My voice caught on the last word. I thought our marriage was solid, different from other couples who grew apart or stopped communicating. Narcissistic personalities are often exceptional at compartmentalizing, Patricia observed. They can be fully invested in multiple realities without experiencing the cognitive dissonance most people would feel. As a psychology professor, I recognized the truth in her assessment. Daniel had always been charming, confident, the center of attention in any room. Traits that had attracted me to him initially now revealed their darker potential. "What's our next move?" I asked, pushing aside painful self-analysis for another day. "We have two options," Patricia said. "We can confront him privately, with evidence in hand, and negotiate a settlement that includes his confession to bigamy. Or we can file both divorce proceedings and criminal charges simultaneously, which would become public record immediately." I considered both paths. The private confrontation appealed to the part of me that still couldn't believe Daniel had done this, that wanted to see his face when he realized he was caught. But the public filing aligned with my desire for justice, for consequences that couldn't be hidden or minimized. "Is there a third option?" I asked slowly, an idea forming. Patricia raised an eyebrow. "I'm listening." The faculty lounge at Columbia University was quiet that Friday afternoon. Most professors had already left campus, eager to start their weekends. I sat at a table in the corner, nursing a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Waiting. My phone buzzed with a text from Patricia. He just entered the building. Showtime. I took a deep breath, straightened my shoulders, and opened my laptop. The email I'd sent Daniel yesterday had been simple. "I'm ready to talk. Faculty lounge at Columbia, 4 p.m. Friday. Come alone." The door opened and Daniel walked in, scanning the room until his eyes found mine. He looked terrible. Unshaven, dark circles under his eyes, his usually immaculate clothing slightly rumpled. "Good. Claire," he said, relief evident in his voice as he approached my table. "Thank God. I've been so worried." "Have a seat, Daniel," I replied coolly, gesturing to the chair across from me. He sat down, reaching for my hands across the table. I pulled them away before he could touch me. "Claire, please. Let me explain. What you saw, was you having lunch with your other wife?" I interrupted, my voice steady despite the churning in my stomach. "Or should I say your only legal wife, since your marriage to Marissa is technically invalid." All color drained from his face. "What are you—" I turned my laptop toward him, displaying a slideshow of images, the Facebook photos of him and Marissa, the Brooklyn apartment lease in both their names, the second phone bill, bank statements showing regular transfers to an account in her name. "Bigamy is a Class D felony in New York State," I said conversationally, as if discussing an interesting academic paper. "Punishable by up to 7 years in prison." Daniel stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing without sound. Finally, he whispered, "How did you find out about all this?" "Does it matter?" I countered. "What matters is what happens next." He looked up at me then, desperation in his eyes. "Claire, please. This will destroy everything. My career, my reputation." "Our life together. Our life together?" I repeated incredulously. "The life where you've been married to another woman for 3 years? Where you're expecting a child with her? That life?" Daniel flinched at each question, then seemed to deflate before my eyes. "I never meant for any of this to happen," he said quietly. "Marissa was just— It started as a fling, during that Tokyo business trip, but then it became more, and I couldn't bring myself to end either relationship. So instead you married her? While still married to me? The absurdity of his explanation would have been almost funny if it weren't so devastating. She was pregnant, he said, as if that explained everything. She lost the baby, but by then we were already married. And I still loved you, Claire. I always loved you. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. You don't know what love is. He leaned forward urgently. Tell me what you want. Money, the apartment. I'll give you anything. I want you to look over there, I said, nodding toward the doorway where Patricia stood with a video camera pointed directly at us. I've been recording this entire conversation. Daniel's head whipped around, his expression morphing from desperation to fury in an instant. You set me up. No, Daniel. You set yourself up the moment you decided to marry two women. I closed my laptop calmly. Now, here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign the divorce papers my attorney has prepared, which include a generous financial settlement. You're going to make a full confession to the district attorney, and you're going to tell Marissa everything. And if I refuse? I smiled, a cold expression that felt foreign on my face. Then Patricia releases this video to the university board, your advertising agency, and every media outlet in New York. Oh, and I press criminal charges immediately. Daniel's shoulders sagged in defeat. You've thought of everything, haven't you? I learned from the best, I replied. You always said I should be more strategic in my thinking. As Patricia approached our table with the divorce papers, I added one final twist of the knife. By the way, I changed my relationship status on Facebook. Apparently, a lot of people are very curious about why. 3 months later, the beachfront cafe in San Diego was exactly as Zoe had described, casual but elegant, with unobstructed views of the Pacific Ocean. I sipped my mimosa, enjoying the warmth of the California sun on my face. Professor Ellis? A tentative voice interrupted my reverie. I looked up to see one of my former students, a bright young woman who had graduated the previous year. Allie, what a wonderful surprise! I thought that was you, she said, smiling broadly. Are you visiting San Diego? Actually, I live here now, I replied. I accepted a position at UCSD starting next semester. After the divorce was finalized, with Daniel agreeing to all my terms to avoid criminal prosecution, I had needed a fresh start. A colleague had mentioned an opening in the media psychology department at the University of California, San Diego, and within weeks I'd secured the position, sold the Manhattan apartment, which Daniel had signed over to me, and moved across the country. That's amazing, Allie enthused. I always said you were the best professor in the program. Columbia's loss is definitely UCSD's gain. We chatted for a few more minutes before she continued on her way, leaving me to my thoughts and the rhythmic sound of waves breaking on the shore. My phone chimed with a text from Zoe. Saw the news. How are you feeling? Attached was a link to a New York Times article. Prominent ad executive resigns amid personal scandal. The piece detailed Daniel's resignation from Prentice and Morrow following revelations of unethical personal conduct. It didn't explicitly mention bigamy. Part of our agreement had been keeping that specific detail private as long as he cooperated fully. But industry insiders would certainly connect the dots. I feel lighter, I texted back. Like I can finally breathe again. It was true. The anger that had sustained me through the confrontation and divorce had gradually given way to something else. Not forgiveness, exactly, but a kind of release. I no longer spent hours analyzing every moment of our marriage, searching for signs I might have missed. No longer woke up in the middle of the night with questions burning in my throat. My phone chimed again with another text, this time from a number I didn't recognize. Claire, it's Marissa. Can we talk? My heart skipped a beat. In the aftermath of everything, I deliberately avoided seeking information about Daniel's other wife. Had not stalked her social media or asked mutual acquaintances about her. She was as much a victim in this as I was, perhaps more so given her pregnancy. After a moment's hesitation, I replied, yes. When? The response came quickly. I'm in San Diego for work this week. Tomorrow, we arranged to meet at this same cafe the following morning. As I put my phone away, I realized my hands were steady, my breathing normal. Whatever Marissa wanted to discuss, I was ready to hear it. She was exactly as the photos had shown, tall and striking, with that distinctive copper hair now pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore no makeup, and her eyes were tired, but there was a quiet dignity in the way she carried herself as she approached my table. "Claire," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for agreeing to meet me." We shook hands like business associates, two women connected by an extraordinary circumstance rather than ordinary friendship. "Would you like something to drink?" I offered as she sat down across from me. "Just water, thanks." She rested her hands on the slight swell of her belly, a gesture that answered one of my unspoken questions. The pregnancy was progressing. After the server brought her water, Marissa took a deep breath. "I owe you an apology." "You don't owe me anything," I said automatically. "Daniel is the one who—" "I knew he was married," she interrupted, her gaze direct and unflinching. "Not at first. But I found out about 6 months in, and I stayed anyway. Believed him when he said he was leaving you, that it was just a matter of timing." The confession hung in the air between us. I had assumed she was as deceived as I was, but this added another layer to the betrayal. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked finally. "Because you deserve the truth," she replied simply. "All of it. And because I need to say it out loud to someone who understands what he's capable of." I nodded slowly, recognizing the need for catharsis in her eyes. "He's gone, you know," she continued. "Left the country after his resignation. Last I heard he was in Singapore, trying to rebuild his career there. Are you—" I hesitated, unsure how to phrase the question delicately. "Divorced?" "In process. Though it turns out our marriage was never legal to begin with, so it's mostly paperwork at this point." She took a sip of water. "The baby is due in 4 months. A girl!" "Emma," I said, remembering the Facebook comment. Marissa's eyes widened slightly. "You really did your research." "It wasn't by choice," I admitted. A shadow of a smile crossed her face. "No, I suppose not." She hesitated, then added, "I'm not keeping the name Emma. Too many associations now. I'm thinking Olivia, after my grandmother." "It's a beautiful name," I said sincerely. We sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the cafe and the ocean filling the space between us. "I didn't come here just to apologize," Marissa said eventually. "I came to thank you." "Thank me?" I echoed, confused. "For being brave enough to expose him. To do what I couldn't." Her voice was steady, but her eyes glistened. "I was so afraid of being alone, of raising a child by myself, that I was willing to accept the scraps of his attention. The lies, the constant waiting. You showed me there was another way." I thought about my own journey, the pain of discovery, the rage that followed, the determination to reclaim my dignity. "We both deserved better," I said finally. Marissa nodded, wiping a tear that had escaped down her cheek. "Yes, we did." As our conversation drew to a close, she reached into her bag and pulled out a small wrapped package. "I brought you something. A peace offering, I guess." I unwrapped it carefully to find a beautiful leather-bound journal with my initials embossed on the cover. "I'm a bookbinder," Marissa explained. "It's my actual career, not just a hobby like Daniel told people. I thought, maybe you could use it for a fresh start. New stories." The gesture was unexpected and touching. "Thank you," I said, running my fingers over the smooth leather. "It's perfect." We parted with an awkward but genuine hug. Two women who had shared the most intimate betrayal imaginable and somehow found a way forward. That evening, as the sun set over the Pacific in a blaze of orange and pink, I sat on my balcony with the new journal open on my lap. On the first page, I wrote a single sentence. "Today, I changed my story." Then I reached for my phone and opened Facebook for the first time in months. My profile still listed me as single, but that no longer felt like an accurate description of my life. I navigated to the settings and changed my status to "Claire Ellis is starting a new chapter." Within minutes, comments and likes began appearing. Friends and family expressing support, former students sending well wishes, colleagues congratulating me on my new position. The last notification that appeared made me smile. Marissa Langford sent you a friend request. I accepted it without hesitation, then closed the app and turned my attention back to the journal, to the blank pages waiting to be filled with whatever came next. Not an ending, but a beginning. Not a Netflix drama about betrayal, but a story about resilience. About the power of choosing yourself when someone else doesn't. About changing your relationship status in all the ways that truly matter.
And that wraps up today's story. Now we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments, and let's see how far these stories reach. If this story moved you or gave you chills, give it a like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories. One last thing, rate the story from 1 to 10 in the comments. Your feedback helps us bring you even better ones next time. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you being part of this storytelling journey.